to welcome everyone to the Global Shiurim Center. And today's shiur is somewhat of an introduction to the third parak of Masechta Tainis through the venue of Daf HaShavua. So it's a combination of Somayach Global Learning Center, Daf HaShavua, back the center is in Passaic, New York, I believe, my friend Shimi Globin. And I have the privilege to learn Daf HaShavua. We give a shiur twice a week in Amud and Amud. Actually, you can find it on TorahAnytime.com. And many people find it very beneficial, including myself. For many, Daf Yomi is wonderful, but it's very hard to keep up with, and it's hard to learn it thoroughly. And many people find Daf HaShavua to be something that works into their schedule and something that's doable, more able to be accomplished in a meaningful way. So I want to give you a brief introduction to the third parak of Masechta Tainis. The Rashba, the Chida, and others refer to the third parak of Tainis as Parak of the Chasida, the parak of the righteous, the parak of the saintly, and that's because it's a collection of the most fantastic Agada to Gemara and Shas. Miracles, supernatural, chachomim, turning over the world like that. And it requires some introduction. First I want to share with you really a very meaningful thought that we learned from the beginning of the parak. We live in a very confusing world. Who are the truly righteous? If somebody needs something and they have to get their prayers answered, so who do you go to? Who's really a tzaddik? What's the definition of a tzaddik? Who's somebody whose their tefillos have great power? So the parak opens up with the story of Choni HaMagel in the very first Mishnah of Daf Yud Tes Amud Aleph. The Gemara tells us the story. I'll just review. We've heard it before. They told Choni HaMagel daven that the rain should fall. So he said, "Okay, no problem. If I'm going to daven that the rain's going to fall, the rain's going to fall. No jokes here. Bring in all of your ovens because the ovens are going to disintegrate from the amount of rain." So on the first wide line on Yud Tes Amud Aleph, the Gemara says he davened and the rain didn't fall. So what did he do? He drew a circle. He stood in it. He says, "God, your children have focused on me. They have hinged themselves on me because I'm like a son in your house. I swear, I will not move until you have mercy on Klal Yisrael." The rain began to drip. He said, No, I'm not asking for a drip. Maybe you're not understanding what I want. I'm talking about real rain. I want the rain to fill up the water cisterns. So the rain came down with great fury. He said, "That's not what I asked for. I asked for pleasant rain. God, I'm not set. Sometimes a person needs, please, I need money. I need $1 million. So the Oisha gives you $1,000. You're happy. No, that's not what I asked for. He had a certain ha'azah, so to speak, to which the Gemara says at the end of the Mishnah that Shimon ben Shetach said, "Had you not been Choni HaMagel, I would put you in cherem, machutzaf." You don't talk to God that way. You ask Him for something, and whatever He gives, you accept graciously. But that's not Choni HaMagel. Choni HaMagel says, "I didn't ask for a drip, and I didn't ask for fury." And the rain came down in its proper way. Apparently, they turned to Choni HaMagel. He must have been a big tzaddik. What righteousness do we see in Choni HaMagel? In other words, what made Choni HaMagel the tzaddik that everyone is turning to him? What was it about him? So I saw an incredible piece in the Ion Yaakov, Rabbi Yaakov Reisher. Rabbi Yaakov Reisher was one of the great Achronim. He wrote Shuvas Shvus Yaakov. He wrote Teras HaShlomim on Yoredeya. He wrote he wrote the Choik Yaakov and Hilchos Pesach, and he wrote the Ion Yaakov. And the Ion Yaakov points out, one thing we know about Choni HaMagel, on Daf Chav Gimel, you'll get to it, on Daf Chav Gimel, the Gemara says, Amar Rav Yochanan, about 4/5 of the way down, the first one line is B'maaseh, Amar Rav Yochanan, Kol Yamav Shal Oisay Tzadik, Hayam Mitztayer Al Mikra Zeh. The entire life of this tzaddik, he was in pain over this pasuk. Shir Hamalois B'Shav Hashem Shivasiyon Hayinu K'Chomim. When God will return the captives of Zion, we will be like dreamers, meaning, after Galus Babel, Hashem will return the captives of Zion and bring them back to Yerushalayim, and it sounds like they were dreaming. It's like they're dreaming. Is it possible to sleep for 70 years? Says Ian Yaakov, one thing we know about Choni HaMagil, that if he didn't understand something, he was b'tzayar, he was in pain, he was distressed, it bothered him. And he had a pasuk that he didn't know the explanation for, and how long did it bother him for? For 70 years. That means he spent 70 years being amel, toiling, grappling, bothered. It bothered him. Sometimes we learn something, okay, I don't understand it, what are you going to do? Life goes on. No, for Choni HaMagil, life didn't go on. He was so amel b'Torah that it literally plagued him for 70 years. That was his righteousness, that he cared about his learning. His righteousness wasn't that he sat in a corner somewhere, rolled his eyeballs to the back of his head and went, "Ugh." People don't even know what a tzaddik is. We live in a very confused generation. You need something, who do you go to? I'm going to go to a makubal. Who says the person's a tzaddik? What makes him a tzaddik? Because he does Kabbalah. Who says it's real Kabbalah? Maybe it's fake Kabbalah. Maybe it's Tumah. Rabbi Yaakov Hillel says, people think, oh, I went to somebody, you wouldn't believe what he knows. Maybe it's Koach HaTumah. A tzaddik is someone who is amel b'Torah, period. Good old-fashioned toil. Someone who rolls up his sleeves and strives and pushes. Doesn't mean he understands. Choni HaMagil didn't know. They went to him, listen carefully, they went to him before he knew the pshat in the pasuk. A tzaddik is not someone who understands Tosfos. It's someone who's bothered to understand Tosfos. That's a tzaddik. That's a tzaddik. But people don't view that person as a tzaddik. We create our artificial definitions of a tzaddik. But that's Pirkei de Chasida. Choni HaMagil's tzidkus was his effort and his toil in learning. He didn't understand it yet. That's what made him a tzaddik. Okay, but what I really want to speak about today is the entirety of the parak. The parak is very mysterious. I'll use one particular Gemara as an example. This Gemara is an interesting Gemara. On Daf Chav Gimel Amud Beis, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines from the bottom. V'su Rabbi Mani had a shliach kamed Rabbi Yitzchak ben Elyashiv. Rabbi Mani would frequent his Rabbi Yitzchak ben Elyashiv. So now we're going to learn a story about Rabbi Yitzchak ben Elyashiv. Amar le, so Rabbi Mani said, Asirei dibei chami kamatzaroli. My rich brother-in-laws are bothering me. They're annoying me. They're aggravating me. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak ben Elyashiv says, he goes to Zoe, what should I do? My rich brother-in-laws are bothering me. So Rabbi Yitzchak ben Elyashiv says, one word. Le'ani, let them become poor. V'yanu, and they became poor. Wow, wish I had a Rebbe like that. Amar, so he said, he came back the next day, Kadachkuli, now that they don't have money, they're collecting tzedakah from me. They're annoying me, they're aggravating me. Amar, V'yasu, they should become rich. V'yasu, and they became wealthy. Amar, the next day the Talmud comes to him and he says, Loi mekabli alai inshi basi. I don't like the way my wife looks. I married her 40 years ago. 40 years ago, whew, she was a kala. But now, she's seen better days. Amar le, so the Rebbe said, Mashema, what's her name? Chana. My wife's name is Chana. It's just Yapi. Chana should be beautiful again. He comes home, he couldn't believe it. Vanessa Havasa, she became beautiful. The next day he comes back to Rebbe, but now the Chana's beautiful. She needs my credit card more. Amrale Kamagandra, you know the story? There was a guy, somebody stole his credit card, but he didn't report it. Because the Ganav wasn't using it as much as his wife. Amrale Kamagandra alai. Now she's bothering me. Amrale Hachi Tachsa Chana L'Shacharusa, let Chana go back to her plain looks, but Chazar Chana L'Shacharusa. Tremendous limud in this Gemara, firstly. Listen to what the guy says. My brother-in-laws are bothering me. They're too rich. So he said they should become poor. Now they're bothering more, so they became rich again. My wife, I don't like the way she looks. So she's become beautiful. Bigger problems now. It's a lesson in life. People think, if only, if only this, if only that. Hashem knows what he's doing. Hashem knows if he would give you that, it would be much worse. This is the best situation and scenario you could possibly be in. God has worked out all the options, and he figured out this is the best thing, not for Olam Haba, for your happiness in this world. Now we can't imagine such a thing. So here we're given an insight. Now that the brother-in-law's become poor, it's even more annoying. Now that the wife goes back to when she was 19 years old, it's even worse. Your life is perfect. Now you're not going to understand why. I can't explain to you why, but it is. That's the first thing you see from this Gemara. But here's the next thing you see from the Gemara. Do you ever find in the Nevi'im someone come to Eliyahu, Navi? Eliyahu, I have a problem. Eliyahu just says one magic word and the problem is solved. You ever find anywhere that Elisha, somebody said, Elisha, you know, my kid is dying, right? Somebody came to the Navi Elisha, the kid, so why didn't Elisha just say, okay, let him live? You know, pop up. I'm going to tell you a few Gemaras. They're out, Shas. Try to quote to you where you are if you want to make note. In Baba Kama, Kof Yud Zayin Amud Beis, Rabbi Yochanan thought Rav Kahana was laughing at him. Rabbi Yochanan thought that Rav Kahana was laughing at him. Now Rabbi Yochanan had very long eyelashes. So Rabbi Yochanan lifts up his eyelashes and he sees Rav Kahana giving a little smirk, so Rabbi Yochanan gave him a look and Rav Kahana died on the spot. So Rabbi Yochanan felt bad, so he said, get up, pal. And he came back to life. Gemara Megillah, Zayin Amud Beis. Rabbi and Reb Zera were eating the Purim Suda together, so Rabbi mistakenly shechted Reb Zera. They both woke up in the morning after their drunken stupor, and Rabbi said, Oy vay, okay, excuse me. Right, so he brought Reb Zera back. So Rabbi said the next year invited Reb Zera. Reb Zera said, I have other plans this year. Ksubis, Samach Beis Amud Beis, Reb Chananya ben Chachinai. He got married, so the woman said, look, I don't want a learner, I want a long-time learner. You're going to learn for 12 years, right? So he said, no problem. He goes off to learn for 12 years. He said, wait for me, don't go anywhere, I'm coming back. He came back, she waited for him. She waited for him dead on the couch. He came back, she was dead. He said, get up already! And he brought her back to life. More than that, the Gemara says that all the Amoraim, Gemara Avodah Zarah, had the capacity to bring somebody back to life. Zutar the Ismacha, the lowest among you, the Gemara says, had the capacity to bring someone back to life. Really? How many people in Tanakh had the ability to bring someone back to life? Did Abraham ever bring someone back to life? No. Did anyone in the Chumash bring anyone? In the entire Chamisha Chumash Torah, do you have any instances of Tchias HaMesim? Zero. How about in the Yeshaya, Yechezkel, Yirmiyah? Nope. Only two people in the whole Tanakh.
Elisha.
Eliyahu and Elisha. And even when Eliyahu and Elisha did it, Elisha had to close the door, he had to put his eyes on the eyes and mouth on his mouth, and it was the whole process. I don't know, he obviously didn't have the trick of just snapping your fingers that the Amoram did. The Gemara says, Yadana de Zutar B'cha could be Mechayim Esim. What's going on? This is a question that's addressed by the Leshem, Rabbi Shlomo Elyashiv, the grandfather of Rabbi Elyashiv, one of the disseminators of the Vilna Gaon's branch of what is called Lurianic Kabbalah. Arizal had a system of Kabbalah. The Vilna Gaon had his take on it, and the Baal Leshem, Rabbi Shlomo Elyashiv, you have his picture on the front cover. He expounded on it. Now, this is a very lengthy shir, but I'm going to condense it into a short amount of time that we have. Basically, what Rabbi Shlomo Elyashiv observes is, there are really three instances of splitting of the sea. Two in Tanakh and one in the Gemara. In the Chumash, Moshe Rabbeinu comes to the Yam Suf, and he says, split! And the Yam Suf does nothing. The Yam Suf says, why should I split for you? I was created on day 3, you're created on day 6. I'm older than you, get lost. So Moshe Rabbeinu says, you have to split, and it doesn't split. So he shows, look, Aroinu Shel Yosef. Okay, the Yam said, okay, not bad. And then Moshe Rabbeinu says, according to a medrash, he showed him the bris of Rabbi Shmuel, and what did the Yam Suf do? Nothing. And then Nachshon ben Aminadav said, we got to do something drastic. So now Aminadav jumps in the sea, and what happens? Nothing. And it gets up to his waist, nothing. It gets up to his throat, nothing. It gets up to his nostril, and he cries out, Hashieni kivol ma'ama nafesh, and then it split. And here, it split with such difficulty for Moshe, for Nachshon, and for 600,000 Jews. And then Yehoshua ben Nun comes to the Yarden a little while later. And it's much easier. Yehoshua ben Nun comes to the Yarden, tells the Kohanim, put your feet in the Yarden, hold the Aron, right away. Wait a second. How could Yehoshua have accomplished this task much easier than Moshe Rabbeinu? Moshe Rabbeinu was much greater than Yehoshua. Moshe was like the sun, Yehoshua was like the moon. And yet Moshe was able to, what it took Moshe great difficulty to accomplish, Yehoshua ben Nun seemed to have done it much easier. So the Archaim HaKadosh asks this question. The Archaim HaKadosh says, well, there's a big difference. Kan koydem ha-Torah, kan la'achar ha-Torah. Before the Torah was given, there's something called nature. God created the world. The world operates with certain rules. Rivers flow, seas stay. You want to split it, you need to override the system. To override the system, it's very difficult. So Moshe Rabbeinu had a hard time splitting the sea. But the world was created for the Torah. So the Torah is literally the keys of creation. So once the Torah was given in the time of Yehoshua ben Nun, now the sea had an easier time to split. But here's where it gets really difficult. Because there is a third instance of the splitting of the sea, and that is in the Gemara in Chulin. It's number 1 on your sheets. The Gemara in Chulin says that Pinchas ben Yair was going to do the mitzvah Pidyon Shvuyim, and he met up with the river Ginai. He says, split, so the river talks back, because you know what, if you could talk to a river could talk back to you. And the river says, I'm not going to split. You're going to redeem captives, maybe you'll be successful, maybe you won't be successful. I'm also doing the will of God, flowing. I, by flowing, will definitely be successful. So, ein safek moitzi midei vadai. I'll do my job. You don't even know if you'll be successful. So Pinchas ben Yair says, if you don't split, I'll dry you up for good. Oh, okay, fine. And the sea split. And then Pinchas ben Yair says, you know what? There's a guy who's accompanying me. He's doing a mitzvah. He's carrying wheat for the current Pesach. Split for him now. And it split a second time. And then Pinchas ben Yair said, well, wait a second. We have an Arab accompanier, and he's schlepping our stuff. It's not derech eretz, it's split for me, it's split for the other guy, not split for him, split for the Arab now. Otherwise, you won't exist anymore. And the sea split. Says the Gemara, Pinchas ben Yair was able to do what Moshe Rabbeinu couldn't.
The river, not the sea.
Thank you. Good point. It was a river. The river split. But I want to tell you something. It's not easier to split a river than to split a sea. They're both equally as difficult to split. But be it as it may, here's the question. How could Pinchas ben Yair do what Moshe Rabbeinu couldn't? The Gemara says, look, Moshe Rabbeinu stood there with 600,000 Jews and he said, split. And the sea didn't split. And Pinchas ben Yair stood by the river and he said, split now, and it split. It seems like Pinchas ben Yair had an easier time splitting the river even than Yehoshua ben Nun. So we have 3 stages in Jewish history. We have pre-Torah of Moshe Rabbeinu, which was nearly impossible to accomplish. We have post-Torah of Yehoshua ben Nun, which was a little easier. And then we have the era of the Tanam and Amoram. And it would seem, like from the Gemara of Rabbi ben Yasha that we quoted earlier, and from this Gemara of Pinchas ben Yair, that these Amoram had a mighty easy time changing nature. I'll give you a couple stories. Here's one instance that's, I guess, b'siyata d'shmaya, something that came to me. The Gemara in Ksubis Samach Beis Amud Beis. Rebbe's son went to learn in yeshiva for 12 years. He came back, his wife couldn't have kids. She was too old already. So what did he do? He said, have kids. And she did. Why didn't Abraham tell Sarah, Sarah, have kids? How could Rebbe's son's prayers have been more effective than the prayers of Abraham and Sarah? Eliyahu Hanavi, he wanted to make the rain fall. So God says, make the rain fall? Hashem played a whole game with Eliyahu. Hashem said, Eliyahu, pick which key you want. You want the key of the revival of the dead, or you want the key of rain? But you can't have both. Eliyahu needed to revive a kid. So Hashem said, but you just brought a drowned. So if you give me back the key of rain, and I bring the rain, then I'll give you the key of revival. So Hashem had to make a whole negotiation. Eliyahu had a difficult time bringing the rain. And Amemar says in the Gemara Tainis, that if not for the fact that the world needed the rain, I would abolish the concept of rain. Eliyahu couldn't abolish the concept of rain. So what we're noticing is, if you look throughout the pages of Shas, the Amoram had a much easier time changing nature than even the Nevi'im and Nevi'im and Ksuba. So you say, oh, maybe they were greater. No, that's incorrect. I'm going to quote very quickly 5 sources that as the generations decrease, the caliber of our connection and the caliber of the godless of the tzaddikim also decrease. The Gemara in Shabbos, Kufim Beis Amud Beis, Im Rishonim b'nei Malachim, Anu b'nei Anoshim. If the early ones were kings, we're like people, and if they were like people, we're like donkeys. And the Gemara says, not the donkey of Pinchas ben Yair. Pinchas ben Yair's donkey was a righteous donkey. There are many righteous donkeys, by the way. No, but the donkey of Pinchas ben Yair would not eat tevel. The donkey of Pinchas ben Yair was Zohar and Kashrus. The Gemara in Eruvin, Nun Gimel, the Gemara says, if our hearts, the hearts of the early ones were open like an ulam, and the hearts of the later ones are open like the heichal, and our hearts are open like a needle. Meaning, if you want to know the vastness of mind of us compared to them, their minds are open to the heavens, and our minds are really open, very small. So let me tell you the upshot. There are another 2 Gemaras, but for the sake of time, the Baal HaLeshem says the following earth-shattering chiddush, and that is, the main Torah is the oral law, the Torah Sheba'al Peh. The explosion of Torah Sheba'al Peh occurred in the times of the second Beis Hamikdash. When the Jews returned from Babel, they were in very bad shape. They almost disappeared. If you read the Navi Ezra, you'll see the intermarriage rate was terrible. They didn't even know necessarily what a sukkah was. Klal Yisrael's knowledge of Torah had slipped away almost completely. Why? What happened to them? The answer is what happened to them was the oral law had not been developed yet. For example, they had not made decrees against the bread of Goyim, or the oil of Goyim, social interaction with Goyim. The Torah Sheba'al Peh had not yet been operating using the 13 principles, Yud Gimel Midah Shatar Nidreshes Lahem. Says the Baal HaLeshem, in the times of the second Beis Hamikdash, the heavens opened up for the Tanam and Amoram, and God allowed them to employ many methodologies of Torah Sheba'al Peh, Gzeira Shava, Kal V'chomer, Binyan Av. Not that they were not known before, but they weren't being utilized before. And God, for reasons that are beyond our understanding, decided to give over to that generation, Tanoim and Amoram, the code of the oral law, the methodology of the oral law, the process of the oral law. And the Torah Sheba'al Peh exploded. And as we learned, the world is controlled, the keys of the universe is the Torah. When God gave over to the Tanoim and Amoraim the keys of the oral law, along with it came the control over the universe. And the Tanoim and Amoraim were able to do what the Nevi'im were not able to do. Not that they were greater, and not that they were closer to Hashem. I believe Rabbi Moshe Shapiro explains that when the Nevi'im were around, God was so close to the Nevi'im, so God says, I'm close with you, I have the controls, I don't need to give it to you. In the times of the second Beis Hamikdash, we were much further from God, we didn't have Shekhinah. God says, I'm out of here. I'm out of here, here, take it. If I'm here, I haven't. If I need to leave, so I'll leave it with you. But because Rebbe Shem gave over to Klal Yisrael the oral law, as we see it, the Mishnah and the Gemara is an explosion of the oral law. Along with it came the controls of the universe. When you're learning the third parak of Tainus, it was a specific era. Chayni Hamado, Rabbi Yitzchak ben Al-Yashiv, Rabbi Chanina ben Doisa. All of these tzaddikim lived in the heights of the giving over of the oral law to the Chachmei HaTalmud and the Chachmei HaMishnah, and along with it you have one of the greatest prakim in Shas, Perka the Chasida, the chapter of the righteous, and along with it came tremendous miracles. We'll end off with one last chiddush. You know, the Gemara says in Yuma, Samach Tes Samach Beis, Sanhedrin, Samach Daled, that the Chachamim said, God, the desire for Avodah Zarah, it's too strong. Let's abolish it. And God said, no problem. And they said, let's abolish the desire for arayos. And Hashem said, okay, I'll give it to you, but look what happens. And the Gemara says the world went haywire. I have a question. Do you realize what they davened for? They davened to abolish the desire for avodah zarah, to change the reality of the world. Why didn't Avraham Avinu daven for that? Why didn't Moshe Rabbeinu daven? Why didn't Moshe Rabbeinu daven? Rebbeinu Shalom, the Klal Yisrael was traveling to Moav. What? Baal Pa'ar is a big taiva. Just be mevatel the desire for Baal Pa'ar. The answer is Moshe would never had the chutzpah to ask for such a thing, to daven, to abolish the Yitzhara for something. But it says about Halashim, these Tanam and Amaram, when they were given such access to the oral law, and thereby control of the universe, that gave them, so to speak, the audacity to ask the Rebbeinu Shalom to literally change human reality. And Hashem did. One last Chiddush, this time for real. There's a klal in Shas, that when Yoshua ben Nun came into Eretz Yisrael, he sanctified Eretz Yisrael, and it was only sanctified temporarily. Kitchel Rishayna, Kitchel Shaita, V'loi Kitchel Asur. But in the coming of the second temple, we say when they sanctified Eretz Yisrael, it was Kitchel Shaita, the Kitchel Asur. The sanctification of Eretz Yisrael from the time of the second Beis HaMikdash is for eternity. Meaning, listen carefully, that means when the Goyim came in and destroyed Eretz Yisrael in the times of Nebuchadnezzar, if you would go live in Eretz Yisrael, there was no Kedusha in Eretz Yisrael. The Kedusha left. Kidsha Rishayna, Kidsha L'Shaita, Ve'loi Kidsha L'Asur Labai. Kedusha left. What about today? We're in Galus. If you go to Eretz Yisrael, does Eretz Yisrael have Kedusha? Yeah! Who did it? Ezra. How could Ezra do what Yeshua ben Nun couldn't do? The answer is this principle. In the time of the second Beis HaMikdash, they were endowed with extra koyach HaKedusha through the control of the oral law, and thereby they were able to accomplish and perform feats that were never been able to accomplish in history.
What do we have now?
What do we have now? Very little, right? But maybe we could add. So I gave this share at Gateways over Pesach. So it was, I thought it was going to be like real revelation to everyone. It's a big chiddush.
Amazing.
And there was someone sitting there and said, "Oh no, this is one person who probably knows this. Rabbi Tatz was there." So I mentioned to him. Actually, the explanation I gave from Rav Shapiro is what Rabbi Tatz told me. So that Rav Shapiro explained the lesson in this way. The lesson doesn't say that. But anyway, maybe we could suggest. I mentioned this to Rabbi Tatz. He seemed to concur that you hear these stories about these sages in Tzfas, in the 16th century, the Arizal, the Ramak, Reb Chaim Vital, and the miracles that they were performing are indescribable. It's like even more than in the third parak of Tainus. How do you explain that? Well, maybe with the same phenomenon of the lesson, that for whatever reason God decided that era in Tzfas should be the era in which the Kabbalah comes down to the world, which is an even greater form of knowledge in a certain sense. And along with that giving of Torah, at that period of time, came along with that certain control over the universe that maybe until then people did not have access to. But be it as it may, I think one important thing we see is we have the Torah. The control of the universe is in the Torah. We may not be on the level to access it, but the latent nuclear energy that exists in Limud Torah is so incredible and so powerful, and it's our source of life. As the Rebbe says, "Oirech yomim b'mino, usmol lo'ishiv v'kavod." May we all benefit from the blessings of the Torah. Thanks so much for listening. Bracha v'atzlacha. Shkoyach.